We're going more on location. We're talking to a more diverse group of people, bringing the special needs community right to you. Hi, welcome to the Wendy Life. This is going to be a fun show today. I have a friend of mine, Dana Willis, who came in to show us and tell us we're going to learn about sign language. Your passion is sign language.
Yes, it is.
Now, we often see people doing it and it's kind of foreign to most of us, but you know it, right? You know
Yes.
the whole thing. How did you get started with sign language?
Well, I had a friend who was deaf. Her name is Alika, and I was in about 7th grade, and I saw her speaking to her family, but when she was with her friends and at school, she would sign.
Okay.
And so she was oral, but she was born deaf.
Wow.
And so I would tell her, I don't want to talk to you. I want to learn that.
Wow.
Yes. And
Okay.
so she started teaching me signs, and then I took classes, and eventually I went to school for interpreting. Life happened and it didn't finish that way, but
Okay.
it is a passion of mine.
Well, that was awesome because although she was oral, you wanted to talk to her in a way that was more comfortable for her.
Yes, because I could see the difference in her attitude.
Okay.
She would talk to her family, which was fine,
Mm-hmm.
but her life came when she was signing with her friends.
Wow. So that's around 12. Is that right?
7th grade. Yes.
So
12, 13. Mm-hmm.
How did you, so she's teaching you. Was it hard to learn?
Not for me because I was like a sponge.
Okay.
Everything she did with her hands and her facial expression, I wanted to do it.
Because it's still a conversation. You're just using your hands, but you
Yes.
still have the body language and
Correct.
the facial expressions.
Correct.
So how did it become a passion from learning with her? Alika?
Alika.
Okay.
Yes. It was a passion because, like I said, with her family, it was just communication. That was how she communicated. But her energy, her passion, her life came out through her signs.
Okay.
So I was just intrigued, and I said, I want that. I want to learn it. Teach me. Don't talk to me.
Okay.
Sign to me. So,
That was awesome. So once you got to having a conversation,
yes.
that was a great connection, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So now you are currently a social worker
Yes, I am.
for the foster care system.
In the foster care system.
God
yes.
bless you for that. How did you get into that?
Life experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're on the other side of the system, if I didn't like what I saw, I wanted to be that. So if I received a service and the caseworker was less than friendly or just treated me as a number, not a person, I didn't want that for someone else. So I wanted to be that person.
So you have a compassionate heart, and that's what it
Yes.
takes to look at someone. I mean, because most kids be like, I can talk. So me and Alika, we can talk.
Yeah.
But you wanted to talk to her on her level,
Yes.
which was amazing.
Yes.
So what is your goal with sign language?
Well, right now it's more a ministry that I do in church. My goal actually still is to become a full-fledged interpreter.
Wow. So you're at church and you're on the stage while everything's going on, and you're, for anyone who's in the audience who has a
Yes.
hard time hearing, they can read what you're saying.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Right now it's a music ministry.
Okay.
But I have interpreted a church service. And that is my passion because I know that when I was in school for sign language interpreting, the teacher talked about the message or Christianity or things regarding God in church were lost because there was nobody to bring it to a person who could not hear it.
Yeah.
So if you bring it to them where they are, then
They're
they
gonna
would be able to receive it as well.
Yeah. Because I know I've been to churches where you have that and there are churches that aren't. So how can we get that to be more of a norm than just every now and then you'll go to a church and see it? What do we have to do?
Have someone who has a passion for it.
So we need to have you just visit all the churches.
I wish I could, but
Yeah.
Usually it begins as a need.
Okay.
In the past, when I interpreted for a church, there was a woman who was deaf.
Okay.
And so there was a need for it. So we had a group who learned the signs for the church service, and everything relative to that. And we signed for her. Sometimes it was just her, But then when people recognize that, hey, this church has this ministry, then we grew to maybe at least 5 or 7 people who were hearing impaired and deaf. And it grew from there.
So for people, and I know just thinking about myself, sometimes if you think like the lady, she was the only one, you don't want to say anything. So how does a person who has that need, or you just never know unless someone says it, how do we get that message out? Speak up, or should churches or just general public places have that where they have it? So wherever people go, they know they have a way of communicating and understanding what's going on.
It would probably go best both ways. If you go into a place and know you need a special accommodation, it's okay to speak up. And then for that church or that place, if you let people know we have this service available, and then that the word of mouth is sometimes the best way to go as well.
Wow. So other than church, have you used your talent and your passion in other areas, like in your foster care work?
Not in foster care so much. Every once in a while in public. I have seen conversations and I'll watch from afar and
you can tell everything that's going on.
Yes, I can.
They think they have their own and you're like, I know what you're saying.
Yes.
That's cool though.
I don't always intrude because that's not always my business. It's a private conversation. But if I see a need, sometimes in school, there were opportunities for us to attend a specific performance for the deaf and hard of hearing.
Wow.
Part of our assignments was to go to a courthouse where you learn the legal interpretation. And then I believe we had a school setting as well.
So now is sign language the same across the board? You know, like we have English and Spanish and you have slang. Does it differ with cultures sometimes?
Yes, it does.
Oh, see, wow.
So, yes. In school, we were taught American Sign Language.
Okay.
But there is signed English. Different countries and languages have their own version. There are some signs that are universal, but according to the language and the culture is how they would sign.
Wow. Now, have you ever, because let's go back to the foster care system.
Sure.
Do you have interaction with a special needs child in the foster care system? And it would seem to me that would be a little bit harder for them to be placed somewhere. Do you have that experience?
I had some medically fragile children. And when the call goes out that a family is needed, in their foster care training, they ask specifically, are you capable and would you be willing to handle a child with special needs?
Is that an easy thing to happen? Like, certain families that can handle it? Or is it somewhat hard to place them?
I think that's two-handed.
Yeah.
Because some families identify themselves immediately and say, this is what we're capable of. We had a family who, one was a retired nurse. Her husband was something else. And they identified themselves as, we will take children who are medically fragile.
What a blessing that is.
Yes.
What a blessing. Now, you have 3 children we talked about.
Yes, I do.
So how does your work in the foster care system and your passion for special needs, how does that shape the mother that you are?
It allows me to show them a world that they might not normally see.
Yeah.
It would also help me to teach them compassion of people with differences.
Yes.
And then they can also learn how to be compassionate on their own. Because when my son was about 3, I started teaching him sign language. So he would say, milk. Mommy, I want milk. And so he would do some signing. We kind of lost it because life happened and it's just like, okay. But they learn to see life through the eyes of someone with compassion. So.
Yeah. And that's important because it's children. I know when I was a child, I didn't have the experience of being around someone with a disability. So you kind of look at people like, what's wrong with that person? Yes. But now being a mom of 2 special needs children, I understand, like everyone wants to be treated as a human, basically. Yes. So it was nice of you to just see Alika and want to meet her on her level.
Yes.
So let's talk to people who don't have that experience around someone with a disability, because a non-hearing person or a limited hearing person tend to look normal.
Yes.
So how can we communicate with someone? Like, we don't know sign language and we see someone, and the language is different when they have a hearing deficit.
Yes.
For lack of a better phrase, they talk funny. How do we?
It's called deaf speech.
Deaf speech. Girl,
yes.
See, teach me. Yeah. How do we communicate with them? We don't know the language. We're not necessarily understanding the deaf speak. How do we communicate and show that compassion?
Usually, in my experience, in the environments that we were in, if a person was deaf or hard of hearing, that's their world. That's their normalcy. So as a matter of fact, I have a quick story.
Yes.
We had a panel discussion in one of our classes. And so the entire panel was full of women. They were all women who were deaf.
Oh, wow.
And I made a comment. I was like, oh my goodness, sign language is beautiful to me. I think it's beautiful. And the one panelist said, I don't know why it's beautiful, because it's functional for me. It's how I live. And
so she was a little offended by that.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. And I cried afterwards, and I went to my teacher and I said, oh my God, that's not what I meant.
Right.
So I was trying to say people with accents. I think accents are beautiful.
Yeah. Me too.
So I was just saying that, I don't know. I just felt some kind of way about it.
You got a little frazzled, like I didn't mean it that way.
And she said she understood where I was coming from, because I told her about Alika. I said, this is a passion. So if I offended her, I am sorry. But it just blew my mind. I was hurt, because she's like, my ears don't work, and that's not beautiful. And I was like, oh, wow. So sometimes it smacks you in the face, because this is her reality. And I'm just like, wow, just teach me.
Yes.
But I really wanted to learn, then show me how to communicate with you. So the people that I've encountered who are deaf and hard of hearing are very frank. If they have that need and say, look, I need you to speak to me, they'll write it down. They'll start, some signs are universal, like telephone.
Oh, is that a real sign language?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The phone.
Okay.
The phone. So they make their needs known, because it is a need that they have.
Well, that's good, though. They can speak up for themselves. Well,
yes. Certainly.
Stand up for themselves.
Certainly.
I should say.
Certainly.
What lesson did you learn? Like, I would be devastated, like you. Like, I was just trying to say what I thought of the whole language, and she was offended. What lesson did you learn from that? Did you just not say it, or could it have been just her response to what you were saying?
Well, the teacher, she put my fears to rest, and she said, I get it. She said, don't worry about that. Just take it for what it is. And so now sentiments like that, I keep to myself. And if I can be helpful to someone who is deaf or hard of hearing, I will do that.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and learn a little bit more from Miss Dana on the world of sign language. We'll be right back.
On the next Wendy Life, Wendy talks with Jennifer Daly, who shares her incredible story about her special needs son.
I took Christopher, which is my 6.5-year-old, and Jonathan, who's 3.5, to a theater out in Lake in the Hills, the AMC out there. And I was taking them to see Dumbo. So Jonathan and I were sitting, and we were about halfway through the movie, and a lady came up, and she told me that there had been noise complaint of a baby crying. And I looked at her and I said, well, he's not crying. And she said, well, I have to ask you to leave. And I'm like, seriously?
In the middle of the movie?
In the middle of the movie.
Wow.
The point of a movie is the fact that you want to hear other people. You want to hear the laughter. You want to hear how people react to things. I can sit at home and watch a movie.
Right.
But it takes away any kind of normalcy that a child has or an adult has. And when you have that happen, then you're isolating them.
Welcome back. We're sitting here talking to Dana Willis, and she is a sign language professional, passionate person who, let's talk more about that ministry we're talking about in churches. How big is the demand, and someone who has a hearing deficit or they're deaf completely, they need that ministry. They want to hear that word, and they come to church. Like you said, they tend to stand up for themselves. Is that something they do immediately, or is that something they kind of suffer a little bit, then they kind of whisper it or make it known to someone quietly?
Well, because people that are deaf are people, it would depend on their personality.
Okay.
So in my experience, the young lady who we were ministering to, when she first came to the church, she sat in a corner. She looked bored and disinterested. And I think from the few people around her, they're like, oh, she is deaf.
Oh, wow.
And she has a need.
Okay.
And then it started out with myself. And then, like I said, it grew pretty substantially by the time I left. But they need to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
But she was able to finally, she actually started a class. Now that I'm remembering her, she started a class. And that's where we really learned the signs for the church service.
Okay.
Now we had already, the two of us that started, we already knew sign language. So the alphabet, general signs for family, food, school, but we didn't really have religious experience. So she started.
How is that different? Because I'm not understanding what's the difference with the religious part and the American Sign Language. What did you have to learn differently for the religious?
Just the physical, the physical signs for God, Jesus, the words that you use in church.
Okay.
So that's the only difference. You still apply it to American Sign Language, but if you're not in that realm or in a church setting, you don't normally use religious signs. So that's what I mean when I say religious signing.
Okay.
Signs that would pertain to a service.
Right.
The books of the Bible, the characters of the Bible.
Wow.
So those signs that would be relative that you would use frequently in a church setting.
Now, is that hard? Because I'm thinking of just the books of the Bible. I'm like, okay, we got to do Ezekiel. Is that spelling it out, or is there a sign for like each name, each character, each book name of the Bible?
Actually, most people in characters, I'll say, have sign names.
Really?
Yes. And
Wow.
I learned as a student that you cannot choose your sign name. It's more an honor to have that person who is deaf bestow that name upon
wow.
you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So my sign name in class was Dana because of my glasses. So this is the letter D.
Oh, so I can't have it because
No,
that's your name.
But
wow, that's interesting.
That was just a way to, it's like a nickname. Like if you call somebody Johnny. So that's how they're calling you.
Okay.
With the sign name. But yeah, the characters of the Bible mostly have names.
Wow.
So Jesus is for the nail.
You do both?
Yes.
Oh.
For the nail piercings in his hand.
Wow. Okay.
Mary
Jesus.
is like, this is the letter M. And then this is her, whatever it was called back in the day. I don't know, but that's Mary. And don't ask me anymore because I don't remember the characters.
I'm trying to remember the two you just gave me. Now, what are some of the simple things that we can teach some people who are watching? Like, can I help you? I love you. Some of the just a couple simple phrases.
If you encounter someone who is deaf, what I've also learned before I show you a couple of signs is that to me, communicating with someone who is deaf is about the expression on your face.
Okay.
So as much as you're animated when you're talking to someone who's hearing with your friends, you're not going to have a conversation with somebody who's deaf just in a monotone. You're going to use your eyebrows to ask a question. You're going to furl your eyebrows to say, okay, I'm serious about something. So to me, it's even in my ministry, when I sign a song, it's about the expression of what I'm feeling.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's where I feel it.
Okay.
Because that's that experience that you have. So you're not going to just talk to somebody blankly. Well, unless that's your personality. But that's how I'm going to convey my message to you as someone who is deaf. Wow. So you'll know that I'm asking a question because my eyebrows will go up.
Yeah.
You'll know that I'm angry or serious because of the expression on my face. So it's more about expression. And there's like a little window of where you're signing so that they can see.
Oh, okay.
So
that makes sense.
If I mess up, my song and sign, you would probably never know because you're going to be watching the expression on my face as you're listening to the words.
Got it.
So, some simple signs. This is help.
That's simple. I can do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Please. Sorry.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love you.
Oh, is that okay?
Yes. So this is the letter I.
Uh-huh.
This is the letter L. This is the letter Y. So you're just combining them all. I love you.
And I love
Simple
everything
as
that you are doing. Thank you for the work that you do, not only with people who are hard of hearing and deaf, but in the foster care system. We need compassionate people in that world.
Yes.
And thank you for the time that you just came to spend with us and teach us just a little bit about the world of sign languages. So until next time, I love you.
Thanks for watching. Check out more videos below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.